Good evening. Welcome to this evening's school board meeting, Monday, November 13th, 2017. Glad everyone could be here. Before we get started, I just want to have a little shout out to the community. And as long as, this is our typical audience here on a Monday night before, so I think I'd take advantage of this opportunity. But what a community we live in. Parents, kids, teachers, we were the highest, as far as I could do, and I did do a little research in passing our referenda, and it's pretty amazing. And a lot of them passed, which is great for Minnesota schools, but St. Louis Park was the only one that topped the 80% mark that I saw, and so we should, I congratulate them, yeah. So thank you to our community, supporting our kids. This building will look tremendously different, the middle school. We needed improvements, and I think it showed that the need was there, and it was all really communicated effectively. So thanks to the Vote Yes committee, and again, to our community. Pretty amazing when you consider about a district that has somewhere between, I think it's under 15% of the city has kids in the school. So pretty amazing figure, 80%. So thanks again. And excited for this evening, always one of the favorite. This night and graduation, we get a chance to celebrate some real amazing academic achievements for our kids and honor parents, and as well as our staff, our teachers. Just great that the teachers get the recognition as well. So at this point, I will turn it over to Scott Myers, our principal.
All right. Well, I am super excited to be here tonight because this is the night when we get to recognize our National Merit Scholars. Our National Merit Scholars are a prime example of one of our mission outcomes where it talks about students meeting or exceeding rigorous academic standards. This group is definitely a group that has exceeded those standards. Just to give a little bit of background, the National Merit Scholarship, it's comprised, or over 1.6 million students take the test from more than 22,000 high schools. Those are some of the statistics from 2018. They take the test, the preliminary SAT, in 2016, and they meet other published requirements, which you can definitely read about if you take a look online. And this group that we're going to talk about tonight represents some of the 34,000 commended students in the nation. So our students are standing with just 34,000 other students in the nation, which is pretty amazing. Commended students are named on the basis of a selection index score of 211, which I'm sure means a lot to the national merit folks, but I don't know how that directly translates for us here tonight. But basically, these are some of our most amazing students at the high school. And the best way, I think, to represent these students would be to have them come up and talk a little bit. So in a moment, I'll be introducing them. And I've had the wonderful honor of being the teacher that has been selected by these students. So I'm excited to introduce the group, but also missing the opportunity to be one of the fabulous educators that they're going to talk about. And then, of course, we're also going to recognize the parents, because I'm sure this did not come without amazing efforts at home also. So I'm hoping that our scholars remember their teachers, which I'll have a list up here to help you. I'm sure you won't need any help remembering who they are. But please don't forget to mention your future plans and your parents when you come up. So starting us off will be Ryan Favour.
So, as you just heard, I'm Ryan Favour. The teachers that I thought had the greatest impact on me going through schools are Deb Cornelius and
So if the teacher would come up when called, so you can stand next to the student. It's really more fun for the parents, for the viewers at home, to see who we're talking about.
Mrs. Stark from the middle school. Oh yeah, Mrs. Cornelius is from Susan Lingren Elementary. And Mr. Wilkes from the high school, he's my English teacher. He couldn't be here tonight. I'd still like to thank him for being a great English teacher for me in high school, and my parents, my mom and my dad. Okay, let's start. Miss Cornelius? Oh, yeah. This will be fun. You were my first teacher when the schools changed, and I moved into what used to be the Susan Lindgren 4th grade through 6th grade, and you were my first teacher that I had there. The main thing that I can remember, the most important, was that you always read to us. We had that one day a week where we read in a group setting throughout the day. No, well, not throughout the day, but once. It was a decent amount of time, and I remember that the book that I remember the most was when we read Percy Jackson there. I remember that. We read in a big group. We brought all the classes together. We read in a circle, and it's sort of I had already enjoyed reading before that, but this is sort of something. And then throughout the classes in general, you helped me really love reading more, and you also encouraged me to just sort of pursue what I really enjoyed to do. You know, you really helped me love to learn. Thank you. Mrs. Stark, math team. You're my math team coach. You're my only math teacher at the high school. Middle school. Yeah. So I can easily say that you were my most influential math teacher at the middle school.
Scooted right under the bar on that one.
I had you in you were again my first math teacher at the middle school. And so it was the one time during the school day where I really felt comfortable in math class. It was something that I liked doing. I was able to do it well and good. And you helped me encourage me to sort of pursue beyond just what we did in class and beyond the worksheets and sort of think about more deeply the actual math. And this has sort of pushed me, I think, towards my real academic passion of math and science. And throughout math team, and which I participated on for the 3 years in high school, it was probably my most enjoyed middle school activity. Thank you. And for Mr. Wilkes, he's not here. Maybe he'll be watching this someday. You were probably you were my GT counselor for the first half of my high school career. And then I had you in English in 11th grade. And so that was the year for me when English became a little more difficult, I believe. You helped me sort of get over my sort of formulaic, just putting random stuff on paper essay writing. It was nothing superb before that. I think you just helped me a lot, just sort of round out my sort of academic focus. You helped me pushed me into going into the IB diploma. I was not considering it at all before you had talked to me. And not at all. I didn't want to be any part of it. I had never thought about it before. And because you sort of explained what it was to me, I think you sort of were the key factor for me deciding to actually pursue that. And having done it for the past year and a half, I can think that that's probably the best thing that I chose to do in high school. It's been certainly the most enjoyable, and it's been the most fun that I've had with my class. I've been able to stay with the same group of people for that same time, and you've just really helped me to get into that. Thank you. Sure. Next year, I hope to be going to MIT. That's my goal here. Whether that actually happens will be seen. I'm also very open to staying here at the U of M. I've gone there for a few classes, and I really like it there. The classes are I like the college experience in general. From the classes that I've had, I like the setting. And I want to go into an engineering, possibly, and definitely pursue probably a double major in math. Math has always been something that I loved. Yeah. Yep.
Ryan, can you introduce your parents, please?
Oh, yeah. My mom, Sarah Favour. Yep. And my dad, Joe. You guys have always just helped me to not really push me to go any one way. You've always supported what I wanted to do, by never really trying to force me to go the way that you wanted me to go. You've always just let me find what I like to do. You've always brought me to the Science Museum a lot. That was my mom. Many trips to the Science Museum of Minnesota. Fantastic. And Dad, you have really just been able to just be there. Just sort of not get in the way too much. Haven't pushed me towards what you wanted me to do, or what you do. And you've just allowed me to develop my own passions, sort of. Yeah, passions in what I want to do. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I should give you hosting honors. I forgot to mention that Mr. Wilkes and Ms. Norris were not able to join us tonight. They had to be with their families, so that's one of the reasons that I'm up here, because normally Ms. Norris would be doing this. So thank you for reminding me of that. I know that Mr. Wilkes will be recognized a little bit later. Also for Tracy Orr tonight, one of our staff members will be receiving the honor for her and sharing some information there. So. That was great. Thank you for starting us off. I know it's no small task. Next, we have Savannah Kjaer. So Savannah, come on up.
All right, so the teachers that I chose for elementary school, I chose Mr. Tangen. And for middle school, I chose Miss Seton, my science teacher. And for high school, I chose Madame Sweeney, my French teacher. So for elementary school, Mr. Tangen, my third grade teacher, he made class so super fun. It was always a blast with him, is the main thing I remember. He had a bunch of special, come eat lunch with the teacher things that, was super fun to look forward to. There were all the different paperclip awards for, being the best student of the week, I guess. And a big thing I remember, since this award is for the PSAT, the first standardized test we ever took was the MCA in third grade, and everyone was super nervous and it was a big deal. And Mr. Tangen made it so fun. He'd take us on walks through the bike trails and things during the breaks, and I still remember that. Everyone was dreading sitting there taking a test for 3 hours or whatever as little 8-year-old kids, and he somehow still managed to make it fun. So that was super great. Miss Musbach was Miss Seton was my 8th grade science teacher, and it was her first year teaching for taking a class all the way through 7th and 8th grade, and she did a fantastic job. I think everyone could agree on that. It was super fun. You sparked my my passion for science. That's definitely something I'm still looking into, still looking forward to pursuing. So that was really exciting. That was the first class when I really started thinking more at a higher level about science, and that's something that I'll take through with me wherever I go. So thank you for that. And then Madame Sweeney is my French teacher here, and you were the first teacher I had where language really started to click for me, I'd say, and that's something again I'd really look forward to pursuing after high school. You took me to Canada. I had an immersion experience trip there, and that's something I'll always remember. That was an invaluable experience in independence and language learning, so thank you for that. And then my parents, I'd like to thank Anne and Dave Kjaer over there. You guys have you've definitely supported me, but given me enough room, I think. You've always just let me go my own way. You let me take care of my business the way I feel I need to without trying to overdo it, I guess, which is something that's very easy to do. And I really appreciate like the space you've given me to become independent on my own. And you've always supported me through a lot of stress or like things like that. You're always there for me at home. So thank you for that. And then my after high school plans, I've applied to a couple schools. Top pick would be Northwestern, but not sure if that's going to work out yet. We'll see. I might continue swimming depending on where I go. I do synchronized swimming. And other than that, I'd like to look into biology or environmental science at my schools and continue learning through that. So that's my plans.
All right, and since we're coming up on halfway through, I should mention that we're hoping for a group photo at the end. So this will feel a bit like a family affair a little bit longer when we make you stand for photos, probably longer than you want to. So we'll move through our list here, and then hopefully we can grab a group photo of all the scholars and their families. Next up is Olivia Grendler.
I'm Olivia Grendler. The teachers I chose for elementary school, I chose Mrs. Goddard. She's my fourth grade English teacher. I chose Mrs. Edgar, who technically I've had in middle and high school, but yeah. And Mr. Wilkes, who is not here, so hopefully he'll see this at some point. Okay, so first I'd like to thank Miss Goddard for expanding my literary horizons. Before I had you, I was mostly reading like fairy tales and like children's books, which are fun, but they don't really teach you anything, and you don't really get much out of them. So when I had you, the first time I walked into your room, there was this huge bookshelf full of really fascinating books, and like I knew that I wanted to read them all. And so throughout the course of the year, you showed me that books could show you new ideas and perspectives, challenge your ways of thinking, and ultimately expand my worldview. And it's really, when I think about how much I've learned over the year just by reading in my free time, it's really miraculous. And so I have to thank you for that. Yeah, okay. Mrs. Edgar, I've had you as an orchestra teacher since 7th grade, and since the moment I walked into your classroom, it felt warm and open and loving, and I always felt really comfortable there. You always asked us how we were doing, like pretty much every day, like to every student, and whenever like I was not feeling well, you would offer me food and you'd let me nap on your couch. And you're always a huge support to me. And like, I don't know what I would have done these last few years without you. Even when I was at my worst, which was pretty bad, you never gave up on me. And I hope that I will grow up to be even half like the kind and generous person that you are. And thank you. Mr. Wilkes. So ever since 9th grade, when I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, school has been pretty more difficult for me than it should have been. But it never really felt like that in your classroom. For you, students learning and more importantly, enjoying learning was always the most important thing, and that was really evident in your teaching. Some of the most intelligent and interesting discussions I had happened in your classroom, and every couple of weeks, we'd take a day to learn about something totally unrelated and random, but like always super interesting. And I really appreciate that because it kind of showed me, it reminded me how much I love learning, and that I'm really grateful for that. I'd also like to thank my parents, Jane and Joe. You guys have always strongly encouraged me on my academic career. And sometimes that was difficult, but I can really say that I learned so much from you. And I probably did really well on my tests because of that also. Yeah, so thank you for being my support always. Yeah. Okay. Anything I'm forgetting? Oh, yeah. Okay, so I've applied to, I will apply to a lot of schools. I'm not really sure where I'm gonna go yet. I haven't really visited. At this point, I'm thinking maybe Grinnell, but honestly, I have no idea, so.
All right, thank you, Olivia. So glad you could join us tonight. Next is Caroline Greene.
Congratulations. Awesome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Caroline Greene. The teachers I chose from elementary school, I chose Milian Porto, but she couldn't be here. And then from middle school, Mr. Kendrick, who's here. And then from high school, Wilkes, who's not here. And so I'd like to start off by thanking my parents. They're right there, Bonnie Carlson Greene and Martin Greene. And so they've definitely supported me and just like let me be really independent. And that's just something that I've really appreciated. And like not all kids have that opportunity, but I've been able to use that. And so my elementary school teacher, Milian Porto, she was my 5th grade social studies teacher. And so we were the first class that wasn't able to go to the amusement park, Valley Fair, and it was the great disappointment of my 5th grade year, but we instead went to Fort Snelling, and we had been learning about that for a while in our class, and it was the first time where school really connected to like the outside world, and like she actually made it fun even though we were all really mad, but it's no big deal. I don't hold a grudge or anything, but so it was just a really nice way to wrap up PSI, and like that was probably my favorite year of my 6 years there, and so I'm just like really appreciative for her to really support me and like keep me going. And then Mr. Kendrick, he was my 7th and 8th grade English teacher, and that was like the English class where like the literature I still remember to this day, and like it was like actually like a higher level, and we did these vocab words that were kind of horrible, but I learned a lot of idioms that were really helpful to this day still, and so just like that was a really good class, and like I think it prepared me for high school now. And then Mr. Wilkes, who was my 11th grade English teacher last year, and then was also my GT counselor from 9th grade until last year when Norris took over for that. But I actually went to a different school for part of last year, and the transition back was really hard, and so Wilkes was really supportive and helped me like figure out all my classes and like what I was going to take and how that was going to work out. And without him, like it would have been a disaster, but he made it really easy. And he also helped me transition back in his class, and so that was really helpful. And yeah, next year, I don't really know where I'm going to go to college yet. I'm hoping to leave the Midwest. But I'm interested in biology and just like the sciences in general. So yeah. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Caroline, please remember us to come back in your professional life if you get a chance, because you're pretty amazing. So next we have Devin Raynor. And as I had mentioned before, Tracy Orr could not join us tonight, but Ms. Tammy Reynolds will be coming up for her. So Devin, come on up.
So yeah, hi, I'm Devin. The teachers I'd like to thank are Mrs. Orr, my kindergarten teacher from Aquila, Ms. Seton, my middle school science teacher for 7th and 8th grade, and Lori Keekley, my English teacher in 9th grade, then journalism teacher in sophomore year, and then ECHO advisor for the past since sophomore year. So it's been a while. So I'll start with Mrs. Orr because, elementary school. So there's not a lot of teachers who on St. Patrick's Day will tie themselves up in a closet to play a prank on their class. So, that's kind of fun. Yeah, so I remember that because that's one of the biggest things I remember from elementary school, just because it was really, really weird because it was kindergarten and I totally believed it. So she pretended she was kidnapped by leprechauns. And she sprinkled 4-leaf clovers from we had a door to outside in our classroom. So all the way from there to the closet, and we were all super confused, and eventually we found her in the closet, and it was really weird. But yeah, so that's just a big thing I remember because that there's not a lot of teachers who will do stuff like that. So anyways, I also remember in her class, it was really the first time I did math. And I remember significantly doing first grade math in kindergarten, and I thought it was so cool for doing that. I thought it was really cool, which whatever. But it just it really since then since I thought I was so cool for doing first grade math, I really liked math because I thought I was special because of it, which is not true. But that just kind of really stuck with me because it was just a really fun thing to do. So yeah. And then in middle school, Miss Seton,
Excuse me, Devin. Mrs. Reynolds has a you from Mrs. Orr. Could she share that with you?
Yes, for sure. I would love to hear it.
So Mrs. Orr had made her way up to first grade now. She's not teaching kindergarten anymore. She's teaching first grade. And I'll just read you a couple of her comments. But she says, as we look back, it all started in 2005, 2006, and you were her last St. Louis Park kindergarten class before she moved to Chicago. So she had 13 students in Aquila Primary Center. You would enter my room like a ray of sunshine, ready to learn with your smile and brown curly hair. You were self-motivated with a natural love of learning. You enjoyed helping the teacher and your classmates. Your parents get credit for your knowledge of letters and number recognition. You entered kindergarten with strong readiness skills because of your parents' love and dedication to you. Devin, your ray of a sunshine has continued throughout your academics years. You were in Math Masters. She researched you, it looks like. School theater and a staff member of the ECHO, to name a few. Continue to rise above the crowd, make a lasting impression as you continue with your educational journey. I'm so proud of you, sweet little Devin. Oh, and please say hi to Jackson and your parents. So there you go.
Thank you. Oh my God, that's so sweet. Okay, so Miss Seton I had in 7th and 8th grade, and I knew her as Miss Musbach/Mussy. That was fun. She probably hates that now.
Sounds like musty.
Yeah, she was really the first teacher that I kind of felt like I had a real really close relationship with, which was really cool because I think that made my experience in her class so much like more interesting because I like wanted to learn from her specifically, just 'cause, like, you know, that kind of like trust that you establish with teachers. And also just sort of, it was the first place I realized that like actually establishing relationships with your teachers could like really, really benefit you in the classroom, which has kind of continued throughout my high school career too. But I think that's also kind of why I've started liking science so much too, because like having a teacher who like is super passionate about it that you really, really like is just kind of like a big thing that makes you engaged in that. So Miss Keekley, I've had like I will hopefully, if she doesn't kick me off Echo for some reason, we'll have for like all 4 years of high school, which like you don't get that a lot, just like moving around through teachers and stuff, because like, you know, that's a thing. But like I think one of the cool things with her that I sort of like learned from Miss like Setton's class is like establishing relationships with teachers again can like really benefit you, but also that like one of the big things she taught me starting in freshman year was like you really want to have like you have to have an argument, like a really solid argument all the time for everything, for English, but like that just like goes beyond that. But also that you like need to be able to back it up, like, and one of the big things that's kind of continued, especially just like interacting with her throughout my entire high school career, and that's one of the things that's helped me, especially with like Echo and my position as like a design editor, where I have to like help like actually back up why I want to do the things that I do for the paper, which is kind of like I just think that's been a really beneficial thing for me to learn. So yeah. I'd like to thank my parents, my dad, Peter Raynor, and my mom, Karen Rowell. Thank you guys for always encouraging me to do my best, but not like pressuring me like way too hard and stuff like that. Like just kind of letting me do it on my own, but like always encouraging me to join things and do more, but like without pushing me to do that. So I've always like really appreciated that. And then for next year, I'm not totally sure what I want to do or where I want to go, but I am interested in graphic design and possibly an intersection of that with like math or something, and like data and organizing that. So we'll see if that can be a thing I can do. So thank you.
All right. I'm very curious to see if Ms. Keekley and Devin's parents meet up later to talk about those arguments improving over the years. So last but not least, we have William Phelan. So come on up.
All right, so I'd like to thank you all for being here, especially my parents, Gregory and Rebecca Phelan. I guess I'm a little taller. Okay, so the three teachers that I picked as the most influential in my educational career, my first is Kjaer Bancroft, who taught me in 5th grade at Susan Lingard Elementary. My next is Megan Setton, who taught me science in 7th and 8th grade at St. Louis Park Middle School. And lastly, Brad Brubaker, who taught me in history in 11th grade at the high school here. Okay, so first, Miss Bancroft. I mean, I feel like 5th grade, especially with the way we have the middle school set up here, is really like a transitioning year. I mean, you hear about how scary the middle school is. You got lockers with combos. I mean, what even is that? And then just all of these big changes, and I think she really like helped sort of explain some of those things and just make them seem more doable to us. Another thing is like in 5th grade, I think at Susan Lingard, there was sort of the general knowledge that there was like a really fun teacher that like everybody wanted. And then there was the strict teacher. And at first I thought people told me that I had this strict teacher, which was like, oh my God, that's terrible. But then I feel like actually going through that, I think kids don't know the difference between strict and actually like understanding how to run a classroom and understanding the real value of education and obedience. And I think that's something that Ms. Bancroft really helped me understand. Honestly, I can't say that I really got it at the time, but but looking back now, I think that was certainly one of the most sort of forming experiences of my time. So thank you so much, Ms. Bancroft. Also, I would like to mention Nordic skiing. I mean, me and my brother and my family has been really impacted by Nordic skiing. And I think that really can be all traced back to Ms. Bancroft. I mean, just taking kids on a Nordic ski trip, just having us ski out by the playground at Susan Lindgren, taking us to Elm Creek. I just think that's such a unique experience. And the fact that she's willing to put in the effort and provide boots, skis, winter clothes, all these materials to kids who really wouldn't have that experience otherwise, I think that's just phenomenal. And I hope you really keep doing that. Thank you so much, Ms. Bancroft. All right, so next, Miss Seton. I'm sorry, I can't call you Miss Seton. You're Miss Musbach. I can't call you that. Okay, so first and foremost, she was my science teacher. I guess it goes back to 6th grade when I had her as a substitute teacher. Everybody just knew her as like the most fun sub because you never had to do anything when she was there. We just listened to music and we just messed around and it was great. And then when we had her for science, it was kind of the same deal. Everybody's like, sweet, this is just gonna be easy and we're just gonna have fun. And then when she got there, it wasn't. And that was great. Like, it was a real class. And I think that's just phenomenal, the way that you were able to sort of like, because you were the perfect substitute teacher and also somehow found a way to be kind of the perfect middle school science teacher. Also, I just think like the way that the middle school is with so many changes, just kind of like everything that's going on, just like the way that you treated kids and the patience you had with our class was just phenomenal, and I just want to thank you for that. Also, in terms of just middle school soccer, you coached me for my entire middle school soccer career. That was really when I started soccer, and I think just like having support and having a coach who really told me that this was something that I could be good at. This was something that like if I got into it, I could get results, and something that could really be fun with like a really supportive atmosphere. I think that was really cool. So thank you, Ms. Musbach, for that. All right, All right, and last but certainly not least, Mr. Brubaker. I just think like your class at the junior level, I think that's probably my favorite class that I've ever taken. I think the experience of doing the internal assessment that we do, a lot of kids think that it's tedious, think that it's too hard, it's too long. But I think those sorts of research skills, which I think I actually got during Scientist of the Week. Thank you, Ms. Musbach. Hey, that was good. So I think just like an experience like that and really getting to dive deep into something that you're really interested in is really cool, much like the extended essay in the IB diploma program. I think those are two things pretty unique to St. Louis Park, especially unique to your class, that I think are just phenomenal. So I want to thank you for keeping that going. Also, I just think the debates that we had in particular, those Civil War debates, I think those were really cool in helping kids articulate their ideas in more more applicable in this time is learning how to articulate the ideas and not attack people personally. Learning how to attack people's ideology and not necessarily their emotions or their personal belief. Obviously, with our class, that wasn't something that happened. We didn't learn that, but I think you had us on the right path. So thank you for that. And also, I think just like all the support with soccer and just like I don't even have you this year, and I feel like I have you. Just like how often I see you and how often I interact with you in the halls. I just think that's phenomenal, sort of your presence in the C hallway. I think an example of that is my dad actually went to him at conferences and asked him how I was doing in his class. Because he thought the same thing. So really, thank you, Mr. Rubicker, for all of that.
He was on the list, William.
All right, so I would also like to thank my parents, Gregory and Rebecca Phelan, as I said before. I just think the support that you've given me for education and for future planning and just sort of all of that in general is phenomenal. I'm going to be honest, I didn't, much like other things, when I was a kid, I didn't like it at all. I thought you guys were being super mean and super irrational. But I think, again, I'm just being honest. But I think, again, as I got older, I just realized, like, how much of a gift that is to have people that are willing to really hold you accountable, willing to really challenge you, even when you don't like it, and even when you think it's not the best thing for you. And I think, again, something like that is really, like, their influence on me has really made me care a lot more about me, not just them making me scared and caring about me. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you so much. I love you guys. All right, and so in terms of my future plans, I hope to attend Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, possibly studying economics or statistics or finance or something of that matter. So thank you.
Scott, you want to do a picture? Is that what?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank William for pointing out that the irrational thoughts about your parents sometimes changes. I needed to hear that. My 8-year-old has been giving me a lot of those lately. So what I would like to do is have everybody come up. We're going to try to get in one photo here. So can we have all of the commended scholars, their teachers, and their parents come on up?
Now I wonder if that's a fishtail or...
I will never tell.
Say, Jim, Yarrow, you should be in that picture also. Say, Scott, Chair Yarrow should be in that picture at some point also.
Which one are we supposed to be looking at? Yeah. Oh, okay. We're just trying to get you all in the frame right now. Oh, this is posed.
You can photo illustration.
No photo illustration.
I felt good.
All right, yeah, thank you.
So,
As we're transitioning, thank you to all the parents that joined us tonight. We couldn't do it without your partnership.
Yep. Thank you. Congratulations. Well, why don't we take a minute? You're all welcome to stay, but you may have something else lined up this evening. So thank you, everyone. Congratulations, students, parents, and staff, teachers. Thank you. All right. Well, always fun. Another good bumper crop of kids, and so very fun. So now moving on, this evening, on the agenda, we have the approval of the agenda, superintendent's report, canvassing of the November 7th, 2017 election results. We have study session topics are the 27 referendum and election recap, resolution to lease administrative space discussion, the intent to enter into a lease agreement, elementary science discussion, policy development. We have the first reading of policy 612.1, development of parental involvement policies for Title I programs. Next item is policy development, second reading. That is for policies 514, bullying prohibition, 515, student records, and 521, student disability non-discrimination. On our action agenda this evening will be approval of those policies that are up for second readings. 514, bullying prohibition, 515, student records, 521, student disability non-discrimination. The next will be the request for the approval of resolution to lease administrative space. And finally, the request approval of intent to enter into a lease agreement. Then we will have communications and transmittals and adjournment. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Jim Beneke. Seconded by Bruce. Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 7-0. Okay, our superintendent's report. Superintendent Osai.
Good evening, Chair Yarosh and members of the board. Before I get into my report, I am just reflecting on the experience I just had listening to all of our students share their experience over their time here in St. Louis Park Public Schools. And one of the things that I couldn't let go that kept coming to me was the part of our mission that talks about energizing and enhancing the spirit. And within that, I heard several pieces that came out that really started to define what that looks like here. I heard students talking about their interest being sparked. I heard about the importance of immersion and experiential learning, expanding literary knowledge, enjoying learning. You know, this notion of real relationships, holding students accountable, and even going as far as dressing up as a leprechaun and being tied up in a closet, right? But it was really impressive to see our students talk about and really live out and express how our mission was brought to life for them. So great honor for those students, their families, and our staff. For the purpose of my board or superintendent report tonight, I just really want to spend my time this evening. And Chair Yarosh, you started us off this way, but just by thanking the voters here in St. Louis Park. The evening of the election, I probably said it 5 different times, but I said, where does it happen? You know, where you can pass referendum questions at 85 and 81%. And after I probably asked myself that question 5 times, I just finally said, well, where it happens is here in St. Louis Park. So we are just extremely humbled and thankful for the continued support of our schools, and look forward to implementing all of the, I joke and say that, now the hard work begins, right? The implementation of all of the projects over the next several years, but we're excited to have that opportunity. With that renewal, and as we think about some of the hard work that will be occurring, it's going to really allow us to address the increasing enrollment, aging facilities, and need for more flexible learning spaces to accommodate next century learning here in St. Louis Park. In addition to the successful passing of two questions on a bond referendum and operating levy question, we had 3 board members elected that night. So Karen Waters was elected to her 2nd term, congratulations, and Ann Casey and Mary Tomback were elected for the first time to serve on the St. Louis Park Public School Board. So welcome. We look forward to your service here starting, I think the first meeting maybe January 8th, right? And with that, with the welcoming of new board members means that board members that have spent a significant amount of time here contributing to this community, Jim Yarosh and Bruce Richardson, will be, having their last couple of meetings come up. And I've had a chance to mention this publicly before, but just in my short period of time, I've just really appreciated your leadership, your support, and just your laser-like focus on the success of all students here in St. Louis Park. And I'm confident that although you won't be sitting up here, you'll still be doing those same things to help us, move the work here forward. And then just lastly, one of the neat pieces about last week was the kids voting. And I just would like to thank the League, St. Louis Park League of Women Voters, for volunteering their time to really create the space for our students to participate in kids voting. Kids Voting USA is a nonpartisan, grassroots-driven voter education program committed to creating lifelong voting habits in children, increasing family communication about citizenship, and encouraging greater adult voter turnout. And it was awesome to see our 2nd through 5th graders at the elementary and 6th through 8th graders at the middle school have an opportunity to vote for city council positions, school board positions, and 2 referendum questions. I shared with my colleagues, I said, well, how accurate are these guys, right? Because I can get an indication of what's going to happen around the referendum before the polls come in, and they were pretty close in most instances, a little off in some places, but all in all, it was a great experience for our students. And with that, that concludes my superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Aston. All right, we're on to the canvassing of the November 7th, 2017 election results. We have a packet here. Cindy, to help out here, we need a motion, right, to...
Can I just explain a couple things first?
Please.
So in front of you, board members, it's just a little revision, a packet with a little clip that has a lot of detail that supports the motions and action we're going to ask you to take to canvass this election. I've briefed them into three separate resolutions that are necessary by the Secretary of State in the state of Minnesota to make this election official. So if you look at the first page, it's got each resolution listed separately. As you open up your documents, I've got number 1, 2, and 3 that coordinate with those, so you can see which ones you're speaking about and recommended for approval. So I think if you would ask for a motion, Chair Yarios, and then have someone read it, and they all require a roll call vote.
So they each need to be read in full, or can we waive the
Yes,
reading?
they do.
All right. So it is recommended that the school board approve the resolution canvassing returns of votes of school district special election. Is there a motion? Moved by Karen. Second by Ken. Karen, do you want to read the motion? I mean, let's see.
Pursuant to due call and notice thereof, a regular business meeting of the School Board of Independent School District Number 283, St. Louis Park, State of Minnesota, was duly held in said school district on November 13th, 2017 at 7:00 p.m. for the purpose and part of canvassing a special election. So Member Waters moved the adoption of the following resolution. Resolution canvassing returns of votes of school district special election. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 283, State of Minnesota as follows. It is hereby found, determined, and declared that the special election of the voters of this school district held on November 7th, 2017 was in all respects duly and legally called and held. As specified in the attached abstract and return of votes cast at said election, a total of 8,606 voters of the school district voted on the question of renewing the expiring referendum revenue authorization of the school district for taxes payable in 2019 and thereafter. School district question number 1, of which 6,609 voted in favor, 1,166 voted against the same, and there were 0 completely blank or defective ballots. Said proposition, having received the approval of at least a majority of such votes, is hereby declared to have carried. As specified in the attached abstract and return of votes cast at said election, a total of 7,798 voters of the school district voted on the question of authorizing the issuance of school building bonds for a school acquisition and betterment program, school district question number 2, of which 6,343 voted in favor, 1,455 voted against the same, and there were 0 completely blank or defective ballots related to this question. School district question number 2, having received the approval of at least a majority of such votes, said proposition is hereby declared to have carried. The clerk is hereby directed to certify the results of the election to the county auditors of each county in which the school district is located in whole or in part, and to the Commissioner of Education. The motion for the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly seconded by Member Ken Morrison, and upon vote being taken thereon, the following voted in favor thereof. And is this where Nancy will do the roll call?
Yeah.
Jim Beneke.
Aye.
Ken Morrison.
Aye.
Jim Yarosh.
Aye.
Joe Tatalevich.
Aye.
Bruce Richardson. Karen Waters.
Aye.
Nancy Gores. Aye.
Right, that motion passes 7-0. Next item, it is recommended that the school board approve the resolution canvassing returns of votes of school district general election. Let's see, that's item 2. Could I have a motion? Joe.
So moved.
All right, moved by Joe, seconded by Bruce. Joe, you have honors of reading your motion.
Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 283 as follows. It is hereby found, determined, and declared that the general election of the voters of the district held on November 7th, 2017 was in all respects duly and legally called and held as specified in the attached abstract and return of votes cast. A total of 17,065 votes cast, by the district voters on the election for 3 school board members for 4-year terms. Vacancies on the board caused by expiration of term on January 1st. The general election results as follows. Ann Casey, 4,734. Mary Tomback, 4,348. Karen Waters, 3,694. Bruce Cantor, 2,768. Christine Johnson, 1,414. And 107 write-ins. Ann Casey, Mary Tomback, and Karen Waters, having received the highest number of votes, are elected to 4-year terms beginning January 1st, 2018. The school district clerk is hereby authorized to certify the results of the election to the county auditor of each county in which the school district is located in whole or in part.
Okay, that's been moved by Joe and it was seconded by Bruce. Roll call vote.
Jim Beneke,
Aye.
Ken Morrison,
Aye.
Jim Yarosh,
Aye.
Joe Tatalevich,
Aye.
Bruce Richardson, Karen Waters, Nancy Gores, aye.
All right, that motion passes 7-0. Next item, it is recommended that the school board approve the resolution authorizing issuance of certificates of general election and directing school district clerk to perform other election-related duties. Okay, that was moved by Bruce. Can I have a second? Second. Seconded by Nancy. Okay, Bruce, have at it.
Resolution authorizing issuance of certificates of general election and directing school district clerk to perform other election-related duties. Whereas the board has canvassed the general election results for school board members on November 13th, 2017 for the election held November 7th, 2017. Now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District number 283 as follows. 1. The chair and clerk are hereby authorized to execute certificates of general election on behalf of the School Board of Independent School District number 283 to the following candidates: Ann Casey, Mary Tomback, Karen Waters, who have received a sufficiently large number of votes to be elected to fill vacancies on the board caused by expiration of term on January 1 following the election based on the results of the canvass. 2. The certificate of election shall be substantially the form attached here to. 3. After the time for contesting the election has passed, the clerk of the school board is hereby directed to deliver the certificates to the persons entitled thereto personally or by certified mail. 4. The clerk is hereby directed to enclose with the certificate a form of acceptance of office and oath of office in substantially the form attached hereto.
Okay, it was moved by Bruce and it was seconded by Nancy. We'll have a roll call vote.
Jim Beneke,
Aye.
Ken Morrison,
Aye.
Jim Yarosh,
Aye.
Joe Tatalevich,
Aye.
Bruce Richardson, Karen Waters, Nancy Gores, aye.
That too passes 7-0. Okay.
Chair Yarosh, that concludes the resolutions that need to be passed and affirmed by the board. 7 days from this date, which would be November 20th, the certificates will be presented to these candidates either by U.S. mail or in person with a copy of the oath of office, and the oath will be administered in the January 2018 meeting.
All right, thanks for your diligence on that, keeping us on the straight and narrow. So
It was a little touchy. The holiday was Saturday. The city and the county were closed on Friday, so these results were like tallied this morning. So
and it has
for
to be
me,
done within 10 days, as I recall.
between 3 and 10 days of the election, yes. So you're very welcome. Congratulations, everyone.
Okay, our next matter are the study session topics. All right, speaking of election, the 2017 referendum and election recap. Better on this end, Ms. Thompson?
I am happy to give you an election and referendum recap tonight. So I will make it brief. You've seen a lot of me in recent months. So as we've said tonight and celebrated over and over again, I'm going to celebrate it one more time. We had a really good day on Election Day on November 7th. So The operating referendum was approved at 85%. The bond referendum was approved at 81%. In case anybody was wondering, someone did some math for me and told me that that was a 5-to-1 yes to no ratio. So we like that. It was a good day for St. Louis Park across the board. And we talked earlier about new board members and those who will be leaving us but not left behind. We know how to get a hold of you, so you can be sure that you're going to hear from us soon. I want to do a quick shout out to our parent and community member advisory committee, the Vote Yes leaders. Pictured is Colin Cox, Julie Yates, Carrie Jennison, Mita Webb, and Nick Vernakis. They led a valiant campaign to get out the vote, inform and educate all of the citizens, and it was a lot of fun to watch them put together their campaign while we mounted a district informational campaign. And then, as Superintendent Osai mentioned, this was our third year of partnership with the St. Louis Park League of Women Voters, where we had kids voting. So all students in our elementary schools in grades 2 through 5, and all of our middle school students, grades 6 through 8, participated in kids voting on Election Day. And so just some pictures here of our kids getting their own chance to slide their ballot into the ballot box and participate in kids voting. It's a great partnership with the League of Women Voters, and our kids got to vote on the same questions that all of our parents did at the polls. So we want to do an extra shout out there to the League of Women Voters. Next steps, we are as quickly as possible, putting our plans together for design teams and how we move this work forward. So you will see me, you will see the superintendent, you will see Tom Bravo, our facilities manager, as well as many other people coming forward in the next few months, talking about design teams and how we will move this work forward. So stay tuned. There's lots of really exciting stuff coming your way. Any other questions?
You were tasked with quite a bit since last spring, and as well as all the staff. And we were there Friday night, so was the staff. Saturday mornings, a lot of hard work went into it, and we all really appreciate it. You did a fantastic job, and I think the results show it. And the reality is, I think we had a demonstrated need, and that was communicated effectively. And I think that's really important and tough to do as a school district. And I think it all went really well. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item is resolution to lease administrative space discussion. Sandy Celine, our Director of Business Services. This is, I guess, the first step of what we need to do is move the district office.
I just whispered to Sarah, now the work begins.
Now it begins.
Mm-hmm. And this is the first step. This was something we discussed in the learning design team as far as the space that we needed in the high school and the fact that the district office space is needed in order to create classrooms for the senior high. And in order to do that, we have to pass a resolution, the board does, so that we can give it to the commissioner for approval. And there's certain criteria that we have to meet the law in order to pass that resolution. And one being that we would not lease space for a district office staff or district office administrative space any more than what we would for classroom space. And through this process, we got some justified documentation as far as what would we do in order to get classroom space. And, the options that were provided to you, we did provide you a copy of what our facility manager and Kraus Anderson actually took a look at it, what it would take logistically to provide some space for our high school. And the one option that would be a temporary option of renting actually cost $360,000. The space for the district office would be $225,000. So it would be a better option financially for lease levy purposes to rent out district office space versus renting out space for classrooms. So with that, there's a resolution for the board for approval, which will then be given to the Minnesota Department of Ed Commissioner for us to get approval for the lease levy to be able to lease space.
Questions or comments? Nancy?
Actually, this may relate to the next item.
I have a question on this one. At one point, it was 100% you could lease levy on your space outside. Then I think it was 90%. Where are we now? How much of the lease can we levy?
And we're paying for all of our utilities and maintenance cost. So this $225,000 would be everything that we would be leasing, because this consists of all of the rental space, and we're going to be taking care of the utility space and the maintenance space ourselves, which is usually that 10%.
All right, so you're saying we're going to pay 10% then, and we can recapture 90%?
We're going to be
from
paying
levying?
our utilities and all those maintenance costs ourselves as a district.
Out of
And
our
normally,
general
when you
fund?
lease space, you deduct out that 10% of the utilities costs that the leased property is paying. So really, we're going to be getting the whole 225.
Okay, all right, but not utilities. We're paying that separately.
We're paying that separately.
All right, but we'll be able to lease the whole, levy the whole.
That's
all right,
correct.
Got it. So it is still 90%. I mean, effectively.
Yeah, certain leases dependent on what the utilities and maintenance are being paid.
Got it. Okay. Any questions on this? This will come up for a vote later. Again, this is just mandated by MDE to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible with our space and not using buildings that we own. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the intent to enter into a lease agreement. Sandy.
Yes, this is related to this leased property. This is an intent to enter into an agreement, of course, contingent upon approval from the board as well as approval from the commissioner. And there's an amendment that we're going to be asking the board to sign that kind of solidifies more dates and contingencies, so that we can spell that out in the contract or the intent a little bit better. And what this agreement is really giving us commitment for is to have the opportunity to lease starting on July 1st. So that will be given to the board for approval as well.
Okay. Nancy?
Yeah, thanks. So that's July 1st of this year?
This summer, yes.
And do we need to do any?
Next year, I mean.
The lease would be 2018 is when we'd move from here to there. Is that right?
Yes, July 1st of 2018.
Are there any lease improvements that are going to be needed to be done?
There's going to be a few. We haven't quite come up. We're going to minimize it as much as possible, and we're going to be using our operating capital for that. We don't anticipate moving too many walls or anything, or making any major changes to the leased property, since we're hoping that it's a temporary space at this point. So it's mainly going to be the painting, the carpeting, and all the aesthetics that we're hoping to make improvements for.
And how long are you anticipating the lease will run?
4 years is what we have the opportunity to opt out of the lease after 4 years.
So we'd have to be there for 4 years? Is there a way to opt out earlier, or do we not?
We have not. Yeah, we have not negotiated that with the owner. They're only willing to go to the 4 years.
Why don't you explain that a little bit, because I had a question, because it is a 10-year lease.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little confused why we're doing that, so I talked to our real estate rep, Mr. Garfield Clark, today, and I think the board should understand that, so do you want to just...
It gives us the opportunity as a district to go to 10 years, but we did negotiate with the owner, saying that we may need to opt out earlier, and they were able to negotiate it to the 4 years, which does give us looking at the timeline that is given to us from our facility manager, this fits right in with that timeline. There's, it really will give us the time that is needed to do that construction properly.
So it's a 10-year lease, but we have an opt-out at 4 years, but it's only one-time opt-out, so...
270 days you have to give before you to opt out.
And so it does give us a little flexibility. I can speak firsthand on construction projects and the timing, so it does give us an option, and I know we will double and triple put that date on our calendars so we don't miss that, because I think we're going to want to opt out Either way, even if we need the space, because we might not want to lock in for an extra 4 years, so we should opt out, for the extra 6 years. We might want to opt out and then negotiate, more time there if we had to, but it does give us flexibility. Say we want more classroom space, say we want to expand, use more classrooms, whatnot. There could be reasons in the future why we'd want to stay where we're at if we needed space for some reason. So I like the ability to have some flexibility there. I think it makes sense. So.
Yeah, I think the ability to opt out, I think having that on all calendars so we don't miss the date to opt out is critical. And I think when we start to negotiate the construction contracts, I think we want to consider some penalties in if they don't meet the deadlines we need in order to move our district offices back, or not back, but into Central, because that's the plan. I would be most upset, and I'd be calling my board about that if we end up getting stuck in this lease and the site's not ready for the district offices. Having looked at the address I'm seeing here is 6311 Wayzata Boulevard. So I Googled that. It's up near 394 and 100. It's kind of south of 394, and it's a bit west of 100. It's kind of near between TGI Fridays and something else. So it's about 2.5 miles north of the high school. So it's in the community. It's probably closer to the middle school than it is here, and we'll have to make sure that our staff gets out and about and stays connected with our schools. That was one of the reservations we had moving to this temporary setup, but that's the best thing we can do to maximize our use of Central. So I just want to reiterate the expectation that people will find a way to get out into the classrooms, not be isolated from the schools. And we even talked about having some kind of a conference room at the high school available for district staff so that you have a place to be when you're here. And as you go forward with the details, have that in mind, that we did talk about that before you came on board.
Yeah, I am aware of that. I think Tom refers to it as hoteling, or having like hotel locations here at the high school, so that can occur.
Would you anticipate? I know that you have some designs for the space kind of going now. Would you anticipate having board meetings at that location, or what?
Probably not, and I guess Cindy has.
We have been advised that we will no longer be able to use this room for board action anymore, board meetings. This will be class space or meeting space or whatever the high school utilizes it. We are starting to talk with City Hall to try and maybe see if we can use council chambers. If that's possible, we might have to look at redoing our board schedule for the next few years to not be a Monday, because they meet on Mondays. So that's discussion to happen in the future.
Okay, I was curious. The other thing, Sarah, is we're right on 394. It's a great marketing opportunity for St. Louis Park Public Schools. We will be very visible from a very busy highway, so I would imagine that we will be taking the utmost advantage of that.
Tom Bravo and I are already working on signage plans, so yes,
Awesome.
we will.
Awesome, great.
I'm sure you're doing this, but I would encourage you to think about whether we have space in any of our other buildings that might be appropriate for board meetings for a
Cable
period of
might be an
time,
issue too, though.
Well,
We
I
wouldn't
know
be able
cable,
to-
but, I mean, I think we should think creatively about that. We have a lot of space.
Anything else? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is the elementary science discussion. And Carrie Ross will be providing information on that. Update.
Chair Yarosh, members of the board, Superintendent Osai, it's our pleasure to be here tonight to give you an update on elementary science. I have with me Sharon Burrell. She is our supervisor of professional development and spending a lot of time helping us get our new science plan up and running this fall. So what we're going to share with you tonight is virtually the presentation that we've shared with all of the elementary teachers. We've been working with the elementary teachers the last few months and recently finished an update at each school with the slides that we're going to share with you this evening. Cindy's handing you some additional information that Sharon will refer to in her part of the presentation tonight, so you have that at your ready. This is a work in progress, as we've just been 8 weeks into this plan, but already we've had many opportunities to ask teachers about how would we connect, rethinking how we do elementary science and revitalizing elementary science, and connecting it to our mission statement. So some of the language in our mission statement we have highlighted for you from the feedback that we've been getting from teachers about where they're making connections to our science curriculum. As you can see, there's lots of opportunities for helping our students attain their highest level of achievement, enhancing their spirit, and challenging our learners to meet high standards. I think we heard that earlier this evening from the students that we had here, lots of connections for them as well.
As we began this plan, this is in support of our strategic plan, and we are working on systemically implementing the standard student outcomes by aligning our instruction, curriculum, and assessment in a culturally relevant manner. And we began the school year in August with a presentation on racial equity and with an August launch. And we're looking at our resource in a different way. We're not looking at our resources as the only instruction that we have. How are we going to teach our children in a culturally relevant manner? So the purpose is to provide support for our classroom teachers and equitable access to resources that support the academic standards.
So knowing that those two items were our outcomes, we started this summer working with the former Parkside teachers and talking about the Parkside lessons, talking with elementary teachers about the best parts of those Parkside lessons, and coming up with a prioritized list from Parkside and our previous elementary science curriculum about what would be the best marriage of both to help ensure that our students all have equitable access to the academic standards. So we've combined two curriculums. Sharon's going to talk to you about those in a couple of moments that help us do that. And we wanted to be very intentional about building on the past practices that were meaningful and relevant for students as well. So we've started this 5-year or I hope it's not a 5-year plan, 5-step plan. It will take us a couple years to fully realize, but we have made significant progress just since school started, not only on step 1 and step 2 and step 3, but we're solidly in step 4 right now with supporting teachers and understanding how we access best teaching practices and being inclusive of culturally relevant pedagogy in our science curriculum through lots of professional development. Teachers have had multiple opportunities for professional development, and they'll continue to have opportunities throughout the school year. Step 5 is really ongoing. We've been asking teachers for their input and asking them to tell us what it is that they need throughout this process, and basically it comes back to two things that they keep telling us. They need time to make sure that they understand what it is that they should be teaching, and access to the materials that will help them do the teaching. So we have been responsive to both of those needs, and we'll explain those a little bit further as we go. Oh. Am I missing a few?
Yeah.
Oh, missing the pictures. Sorry.
Oh. I first of all want to thank our high school science teachers. I am in and out of their science resource room, and they have been absolutely marvelous in making sure that I understand what it was that the lessons were that they were doing with our elementary teachers. And so they started our August launch with providing us with modeling an engineering inquiry challenge, where all of our teachers had a competition to see who could design a rocket launcher with a straw, showing how we can use everyday opportunities to create a science inquiry question. And the resources that we are utilizing, these are our two anchor instructional resources. They are updates of resources that we were currently using. The first one, the Animals 2x2 in the Soils, Rocks, and Landforms, is called FOSS Science, which is a full option science system. Science is not out of a textbook. Science is hands-on and inquiry-based. And one of the updates, this new resource that we are utilizing is aligned to the 2009 Minnesota Academic Standards, and our prior resources were not aligned to the 2009 science resources or science academic standards. The updates that the new FOSS provide are significant digital resources. There are students modeling the lessons. There's ongoing professional development that is accessible to teachers at any time. There's connections to other academic areas, extensions, significant vocabulary instruction, strategies for working with EL learners, differentiation. And the second set of materials is called Engineering is Elementary. And this provides an opportunity for our students to practice the engineering process through an environmental lens or through a design lens or through a product lens as some examples. And these new resources are anchored by ongoing professional learning.
So in the process of updating these materials, we also I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I may have missed something, but I want to see if I heard it correctly. So in the past, we were not up to the 2009 standards, but now we are, or this program would be?
So two things to answer your question, Ken. Number one, the previous materials that we had in elementary schools were purchased before the 2009 standards were adopted. The last time we had a large purchase of science materials was in 2002. So teachers did the best they could to use those materials to align to the 2009 standards, but it was more of a challenge. And then Park-Sci was in addition to that, which was a supplemental program, and Park-Sci was not designed to be intentional about addressing all of the standards. So we've refocused with this opportunity we've had this year to look at our science program to make sure that we really are intentional about the new current version of science standards and that our materials align to that. We couldn't have just left our old science materials anyway because they're no longer available from the vendor. So we had to do some updating with the new materials anyway. It was just fortuitous it happened that way.
Okay, so the newer program is more up to standards or up to snuff.
Correct.
And what Park-Sci was doing wasn't addressing all of what's in the 2009 standards, but what the new program does is address all those and then some. I'm putting words in your mouth. I'm hoping since it's 2017 that we're actually doing something past that mark of 2009.
Sure. So the new materials are very robust. There's more science learning in the materials that we have purchased than are required in the standards. Sure, the standards sound a little dated from 2009, but those are our current standards. Those are the current expectations. The national science standards have come out in between that time too, and these are compatible with the national science standards should Minnesota choose to go down the road of adopting the national science standards in the next few years. That won't happen before 2022. That's the review cycle that the academic standards are on at the state level. Have more?
And I could speak to it. I have taught out of the 2002 science resources, and as a classroom teacher, the materials were not aligned to the standards, and so we as classroom teachers had to do much of that alignment. And so what's nice about one of the things that's fortunate about the new materials is the standards are there, and it's easier to make sure that in my classroom instruction I'm addressing the standards. It's more evident.
So I have a very basic question potentially. What does materials mean? What it constitutes materials?
So the materials come in a wide variety of pieces. We should have brought some for you tonight for you to see, now that I think about that. There's consumable things that students use in the experiments. There's teacher materials, teacher resource materials that help teachers design the lessons and plan the lessons. There's also some student books that have background information and graphic pictures of things that would be helpful for students to know in the pictures. And then there's some like equipment that comes along with it that aren't necessarily consumable but are needed in order to complete the lessons. For example, the balance and motion unit has balance and scales that are part of the equipment and part of the kits. So the boxes of materials are not only the teacher resources and the student resources, but the materials that go along with completing each lesson as well.
And we buy the consumables like once a year, or?
We buy the consumables once a year. With a new purchase, the materials come already pre-packaged with enough materials for 3 classrooms, and then we just supplement with additional classrooms for schools that have more than 3 classrooms on that grade level.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It might be important to point out at this juncture too that it wasn't a total changeover in our curriculums. Many of the things from our previous materials we were able to salvage. Sharon and Diane Big have spent many hours curating and repurposing as much of the materials as we could from our last adoption. Some of the materials just aren't useful anymore. They've lost their stickiness or things like that, but many of the materials have been used and will be reused in the new alignment. So speaking of alignment, we have this for you to show just this high-level view of what we call a vertical and horizontal alignment in a content area. So for the purposes of science, we align it by the 4 strands in the science standards, which would be the horizontal alignment, and the vertical alignment shows the articulation from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. Now, this was the initial plan for this year. We've taken it even farther than that, than what you see on these examples. But this was, like I said, the high-level version of how do we show that we are covering the depth and breadth of the academic standards, not just focusing on one area such as engineering, but with our new materials, we have the luxury of embedding engineering all the way through life science and physical science and earth science as well. Sharon, do you want to talk about the grade level?
Yes. You received a handout for an example for grade 4. And the example for grade 4 is the list of the academic standards runs down the left side. Those are all of the standards for 4th graders. And then the benchmarks are the more specifics for that. And then these are resources that teachers can use to support student learning in those standards. And so the new materials are linked right there. And the other resource that we're using is called the SciMath Minnesota website, which is designed and supported by science teachers from across the state of Minnesota. And so these are resources that teachers can use in order to support learning of the standards for students. There's an alignment both vertically for students and an alignment horizontally for assuring that our students are receiving instruction and that teachers have support and resources to address all of the standards in all of the strands. Mm-hmm.
So this was an additional handout, and what does that look like? I'm not seeing the additional handout, but so if I look on this slide, grade 3 or grade 2 to be developed, that's the work that is ongoing right now to make sure that the curriculum and the standard are actually presented in our classrooms. Okay, Here we go.
And I want to thank the high school teachers. They've been holding after-school sessions with our teachers by grade level, and that's an opportunity for us to get feedback on other instructional resources that are being used. And we will be working with our teachers again in June at the end of the school year to make sure that all the resources and materials are available for all of our teachers.
So you had mentioned digital resources to support the learning. Now, our district does not have a one-to-one initiative by choice. So do we have enough Chromebooks and iPads on site at each location to support this extra digital learning?
Oh, yes.
So the digital learning opportunities come in a wide variety of ways. Number one, they're multimedia presentations that a teacher can use as part of the lesson design. And number two, each grade level now in our elementary schools either has a selection of Chromebooks or iPads, depending on the grade level, where kids can also access the materials and revisit some of the experiment pieces that go along with it. Both EIE and FOSS have really enhanced their digital capacity, and our teachers are going to learn about more how to use that on our next professional development day on December 1st.
So has anybody had a science lesson implemented yet?
Yes. We've been supporting, teachers are letting us know, me know, when they need their kits assembled, and we go out to the buildings and help make sure that the kits are all ready, assembled for them, ready to use, and then the teachers are starting to implement. So we're fielding calls and trying to let them know that if they give us a week's notice, we'll come out, Diane and I, and help them get their kits all set up and make sure the resources are ready to go. So yes, we're very busy, and lessons are being implemented in classrooms.
It's a little bit of a transition year for us, so some of our teachers are still using previous materials. PSI started using science materials, teaching science the very first week of school. So they're transitioning into moving away from the old materials into the new materials. And some of our other grade levels are farther ahead in different schools. But as we finish each unit planner, we'll be swapping out the old materials for the new materials until we get to the end of the school year where we are all switched over to the new plan. And at that time, I'm sure teachers will be telling us what else they need to be ready for the next school year. So we're confident that we have a plan to address all of the academic standards and all of the grade levels. FOSS and EIE are both highly regarded IB-friendly curriculums, and we've hopefully developed a plan that supports materials distribution and teacher preparation, which helps get back to that need that they have for time to be able to get to understand the new curriculum and prepare the new curriculum, and the training that Sharon described in terms of how the high school science teachers are helping provide some training, and then the curriculum also provides us some training that will be happening in the next couple of weeks. And then teachers are learning from each other as well. They're reaching out to each other and having some really robust conversations about science opportunities. Looking at it as, I think, with a great enthusiasm and lots of possibilities. In our conversations with all of the schools last month, we heard nothing but positive comments, and we've gotten great feedback on the organization of the vertical and horizontal alignment, and now we just have to have teachers try that and refine it over the next few months.
And I invite you to come to our professional learning on December 1st. We'll be having trainers from the FOSS Science, and I had a very long conversation with the Science Museum today on preparing for they'll be helping us with the engineering as elementary. So we'll be having professional learning on December 1st. I invite you to join us.
Where is that going to be held?
We'll be holding our elementary sessions at Aquila and at Susan Lindgren, and we'll be happy to share with you the specifics of that training. Yes.
Just wanted to, it's exciting and I'm glad for this. Does the resources, the support, and the training, does this involve actual lesson plans so a teacher knows what to do in a classroom? Are these being shared and improved I mean, is it collaborative effort so every teacher doesn't feel alone out there in their classroom trying to create this? I know they're licensed to be science teachers as part of their elementary license, but science changes, standards change, materials change, and so you've got to keep up to date. So that's my first big question, and then I have another one sort of related after that.
Our teachers are having the opportunity to be together as first grade teachers. And so when we do our training on December 1st, all of our first grade teachers will be together along with our IB coordinators and our EL educators, and our special educators will also be there. And so we'll be together. And then we have plans to come together in June to refine this and what did we learn over the year so that teachers aren't alone in planning their individual lessons. So that's one of the things I am enjoying most about this, is having the opportunity to work with all of the teachers.
Sort of, you mentioned first grade, but are we going to be able to do that on every grade level in the elementary?
Every grade level is
Every
right.
grade level.
Yeah.
I just happened to have a first grade conversation today.
And then at some point, and it's probably too much to add on to this year's efforts, but are there any gaps or things that are missing since we're looking at 2009 standards? I mean, has science moved on since President Obama was elected and we're now in 2017? And is there, Joe says no, so maybe we're good.
So it's all the same.
I was
just so that if there's something we need to add on, and our, maybe our high school science teachers or someone else can help us, we are not just stopping because the standards haven't been updated.
So I appreciate your concern, Nancy, and I'm not worried about the alignment with the standards for two reasons. Just this past weekend, I was at the statewide conference for science teachers, and they assure me we're all good. We're all good. We don't have anything new and innovative that's missing from our standards. We do, as a school district, have the prerogative to add things in addition to the academic standards. So the state standards are our minimum expectation. If we felt like there was something more that we needed, we could certainly add that. And Minnesota was one of the partners that helped design the national science standards in 2013. And so we feel confident that between having access to the national science standards and having a robust set of Minnesota science standards, we're giving students everything they need to be college and career ready.
I have to give credit to Mr. Morrison sitting next to me, because he was whispering in my ear, but it's 2017.
I agree.
But my other question is, and I don't know that you know the answer now, but I'm trying to ask it in a high level way here, Aston, but how often I'm going to want to kind of know, how often are our kids getting science at each grade level? Is it something we're talking about here, but it's not actually happening at the grade level? Are the principals helping the teachers find time to do the teaching of science, or is it just falling by the wayside because we're putting more effort into math and reading, which is a pressure when you have tests, and sometimes what you measure gets done sometimes, and so I'm asking us to measure whether we're actually teaching science and how much of it.
I hear that, and I think we'll know more about that after we've had a little bit of time to be able to investigate how it's happening in classrooms. If I could say right now, if teachers' enthusiasm is any indication, there would be science happening every day for their zest for the new materials.
Open. So what you laid out here looks like a nice, robust curriculum aligned to the standards, and it includes some hands-on work, which is good. Sounds great. What it doesn't sound like is what I heard from feedback on Park Sci. Nancy used the word exciting, but it doesn't sound exciting to me. And maybe I'm missing what we have here. And maybe that's what we're giving up by aligning to the standards more, but I wonder if you could kind of take me through that piece of it. I mean, the piece where we used to be getting that spark. Do we feel like we're going to continue to get that spark by the plan you laid out, or do we need some augmentation to continue that sort of reaction that we get from the students?
So the things that we carried over from Parkside were those sparkling things that you just mentioned, specifically the EIE lessons that were about building things and getting messy and trying things. Those have all been added into the new curriculum. Sharon's probably itching to give you some examples. I know, for example, designing walls is something that the kids really loved doing as part of Parkside and is brought forward into this new outline for our lesson plans as well. So that the teachers are enthusiastic about it. I don't know if anybody has taught designing walls yet, but I think the kids will be excited about it when they get there.
We're ready to teach designing walls. In fact, last Monday, the high school teachers worked with our first grade teachers on being ready to teach the designing walls lessons. And I taught out of FOSS as a classroom teacher for maybe 12, 15 years. I loved the FOSS materials. It does have the spark, and it does have the inquiry piece, and it is all hands-on. There is not a science textbook. And I do believe with my whole heart that the FOSS and EIE resources and the training we'll provide our teachers will be the spark.
So is the building wall experiment the one where they literally build a wall and then take a weight from a pendulum and swing it and break it?
Yep, I've counted out all the weights and everything, yep.
And if you need to know where you can buy quart bags and bales of hay, I can tell you, because we use hay to build the walls. And mortar.
Is that like a Three Little Pigs?
Kind of, I guess. Yeah, there's clay involved. There's different experimental methods that they could use.
Well, I've seen the wall thing at the school, and
Yep.
the kids went bonkers.
Yep.
So that, I mean, that is a spark. That is a
It's
that
the
is a
same
connection. I just
lesson.
want to make sure that we're not
Yeah.
losing that
Right.
sort of thing and continuing to break stuff, which is very important in engineering.
Yes,
I
very
will
much
vouch
so.
for that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes, and I would say the water everywhere is the other one that's coming up for fourth grade.
And I
Who
ordered
doesn't like water?
I ordered 50 pounds of sand per building, so, yep, in the clay. So the resources, one of the priorities is to make sure that all the resources are there in the school for the teachers to utilize so that they aren't having to, wonder where do I get the sand? It'll be there. So that's one of the priorities, is to make sure that everything they need to do the walls and all the things to be able to provide the instruction, all the resources are there. The back of the print shop right now is lined with bins. We have 24 bins that are filled with the consumable supplies that teachers will need.
Thank you.
So I have a question, kind of piggybacking on some of what they were saying, and what some of the teachers were saying, and Parkside teacher were saying things. And you had mentioned part of this, but I didn't hear it, so maybe I'll ask it so you can tell me what it is. So it's great that you're doing all this, and it sounds like it's similar to what Parkside was doing, so that answers that question. But one of the things that came up when they were talking is the teachers don't have time to implement or do these things, or the resources, so that's why we like going in there and doing it for them so they don't have to. So you had mentioned that you would talk about time and resources. I wrote it down, but I didn't hear it. How are you going to allocate time, and what are the resources that you're going to allocate for this?
So there's a couple of things. There was already instructional time set aside, but the preparation time and the putting together time was what I was hearing specifically from teachers this summer and this fall when I was asking them what was standing in your way. And so Sharon and Diane have been on hands-on support for preparing all of the kits for teachers. So the bins that she just talked about, they can go to the designing walls bin and pull out a bag that is everything put together for their classroom. They don't have to go and get cotton balls here and straw there and clay there. And every school has been set up to have enough materials for every single student in the school. So they don't have to get something from a different elementary. They don't have to order something a week ahead of time. It's already there. So that has been one way we've managed time and materials. And the other time we've managed time and materials is actually doing the hands-on training with teachers so that they have time to prepare before they're actually teaching the lesson. We've been offering after-school sessions with the Parkside teachers, and we'll be having some more professional development on December 1st where they actually get to get into that planning and designing and learning from each other so that they can manage their time more effectively when they get into teaching it with their kids.
Follow up, and then you can, hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder, so I won't ask one of the questions, but the other question I was gonna ask was time. I booked the whole day for that. What time is that December 1st going to be?
It's gonna be 12:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon.
So I have opportunity to do some work too then.
Well, Superintendent Osai is starting us off in the morning, so you could come for that too.
Good. Well, I booked it at 9 o'clock till 1, so
Okay.
we'll be there.
All right.
My other one? Okay. The other one was, I was concerned, when I was reading through this, I was concerned that Parkside wasn't matching up with what they were doing in the past. But it really sounds like you've addressed all their questions and their issues. And it sounds like the teachers will be more engaged into actually having it and owning this piece. So I think that's going to be great. I really, really commend you for putting this together. And I encourage moving it through and maturing it out to be better than what we had in the past.
Well, I appreciate that, and I would acknowledge Mark Miller and Kristen Moravitz and Al Wahaka and Pat Hartman, who have done a ton of behind-the-scenes planning with us and sharing their ideas and sharing this plan with them. They've helped in tremendous ways to help make the transition possible.
And I can assemble simple electrical circuits. I did 24 of them just the other day. So it's been great. It's been really, I have felt very, very supported by our high school teachers. And I run upstairs all the time to their science resource room. And they've made themselves really available to assure that the transition for our elementary students and teachers is supported. So I want to thank them.
Okay, so we've got the PD coming up on December 1st, but we had some in August, we've had some in between. So of our elementary teachers, what % do you say have had at least one session of PD to get going on science?
Well, 100% have had at least one session, and I would say,
They were required to be here.
yeah, 75% have had more than one session.
Yeah.
So.
And we'll have another session on Monday, this coming Monday.
Thanks so much for that update. Appreciate it.
thank
and
you.
we'll be curious to hear how our results are and how I'm sure. Oh, Bruce?
I'm sorry, I was putting that on my calendar, and I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, that the curriculum fits into the planners for IB. I heard you say it fit IB, but it will fit easily into the planners, and that's part of this entire process.
That is part of this process. So as teachers teach each unit planner in our IB PYP schools, they revisit the thing and they reflect on how it's been taught in that planner, and they can update it for the following year. So not only is science already in there, but they have an opportunity to enhance it after they've tried new things. We've left our teachers with 3 words this year: explore, try, and ask. So explore new things, try new things, and then ask for what it is that you need. So next year their planners will have even more science than they do this year.
Okay, all right, thanks. Appreciate it. All right, our next item on the agenda is first reading of policy 612.1, development of parental involvement policies for Title I programs. There were a number of changes. Cindy, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair Yarosh. 612.1 was last looked at by the board in 2006. 2016, MSBA came up with different language to title this policy to start with. They're removing the words parental involvement, inserting parent and family engagement. Those terms, parent and family engagement, follow through the whole policy. The intent of the changes are just to be a little bit more clear on capacity, involvement, and just making sure that parental involvement now repeats itself with parent and family engagement. That's pretty much the basis of the changes that I saw going through.
Do you know why the changes were made now? Was there some legislative change or?
2016, it came out in the legislature and we didn't catch it.
All right. Any comments? Nancy?
Yeah, I am just, I know we've done this in some of our other policies. It's our desire to be inclusive. And I'm wondering about having it read parent, guardian, and family engagement. I don't know that every child is blessed always with a parent throughout their time with us. And I think they are sometimes blessed with guardians and others who care about them.
That's at the will of the board if they would choose to make a change like that. This is strictly from MSBA model policy redo.
Do I hear further support for that? I'm trying to think. So,
Parent, comma, guardian, and family would be my thought, and if we just pick that up throughout, we'd catch it everywhere.
So am I taking that as a recommendation for second reading?
Yeah, a red line. Is there any
Parent,
objection
guardian,
to that?
and family engagement, is that what I heard you say?
Parent, comma,
Yeah, I feel like we normally address it that way. It seems like the more appropriate way to do it.
Think of others.
Unless we have I was looking for some sort of, if we have a definition that encompasses that, but I don't see that in here.
It's very lawyerly-like thinking, looking for the definition for the engineer.
It's rubbed off a little bit, so I figure once you leave the board, Jim, I gotta step up my lawyerly ways a little bit.
Very good. All right.
I'll make that change for a second reading. Do you want me to check with MSBA to see if there's any reason not to, or just go ahead and, okay?
Well, yeah. See if, yeah.
I mean, I just want to know before we come for a second reading, just because it's directly, but it's at the will of the board to make any further changes in addition to what MSBA has too, so.
I would like us to have it read parent / guardian and family, but I'm also happy that you check with MSBA and make sure there's not something bizarre in the law that makes that not okay.
Okay. Any other further comment on the first reading for that policy, Nancy's proposed change? Okay, hearing none, I am actually going to back up. Through diligence, we have caught an error in our one of our canvassing motions. It's the first one. We had the wrong number on there. So, Karen, if you're open to a friendly amendment to what we had just passed in our canvass, you had made the motion for that first item on the bond and levy referendum. In paragraph 2, the total number of voters was listed as 8,606, but informed the correct number, or the accurate number, is 7,775. So I guess I would be open to receiving a new motion from you, Karen, with the insertion of the correct number of 7,775 voters in paragraph 2.
If I could
I don't
add,
think we have.
the rationale is just I put in the wrong number. For question 1, those are the number of people that voted. 8,606, whatever that number is, the number of actual voters that voted in the election total, with concluding absentees, et cetera. But the error is mine.
Correct number is 7,775, though, correct?
7,775 voted yes for question 1.
Voted on question 1.
Right, that's correct.
Yes and no.
Yes. Yeah, the two numbers together, you get 7.
So, yeah, the difference
Sorry,
is.
yes, total. Yes, total.
Yes.
Look in your
The
abstract under.
accountant confirms that I'm with
The
the accountant
accountant
down there.
found that one.
Yeah, it's an error on my part. I apologize. If you look in the abstract, number 1 and number 2 are listed properly.
So yes, I am open to a friendly amendment to make that adjustment on question 2, no, question 1. The total number of votes cast was 7,775.
That's correct.
All right, so there's a motion to amend our prior approval of the canvas for that first question. Karen has moved the amendment with the correct number of total voters on that question, and Ken?
I will second it.
Ken seconds it. So let's vote to amend on the amendment. Let's do a roll call, yeah.
So it's a roll call vote. Jim Beneke.
Aye.
Ken Morrison.
Aye.
Jim Yarosh.
Aye.
Joe Tatalevich.
Aye.
Bruce Richardson. Karen Waters. Nancy Gores. Aye.
All right, thank you for that.
Thank you. I apologize for the error.
No, thank you, I'm glad we caught it. Next item is the policy development on their second reading. Second reading of 514 bullying prohibition, 515 student records, 521 student disability non-discrimination. Any further comments on these policies before we vote on it on the action agenda?
I did find a few typos, commas, semicolons, et cetera, that were a little bit wonky. Those will be fixed in the final print.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the action agenda, where it is recommended that the school board approve as a second reading policies 514 bullying prohibition, 515 student records, and 521 student disability non-discrimination. Is there a motion? Moved by Karen.
Second.
Seconded by Jim Beneke. Any further comment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed. That passes 7-0. On to the request for approval of resolution to lease administrative space. It is recommended that the school board approve the resolution to lease administrative space as presented. This is the one Sandy discussed, where we are approving the MDE that this space is cheaper than adding new classroom space to house the district administration. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ken. Seconded by Joe. Any further comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. That passes 7-0. Next item, request the approval of intent to enter into a lease agreement. Now, this isn't binding. We are going to see a final lease to approve. This is just so we can go further with the landlord and get our terms down, and this is non-binding. So this is just our approval to let the landlord know that we are interested, and then we'll pursue MDE's approval, which we have just done, and then board approval with a lease that will come before us sometime in the near future. All right. It is recommended that the school board approve the intent to enter into a lease agreement with Sodi Properties or Assigns at 6311 Wayzata Boulevard, St. Louis Park, as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Jim Beneke. Seconded by Bruce. Roll call vote, please, Nancy, on this one.
Jim Beneke.
Aye.
Ken Morrison.
Aye.
Jim Yarosh.
Aye.
Joe Tatalevich.
Aye.
Bruce Richardson. Karen Waters. Aye. Nancy Gores. Aye.
That passes 7-0. Next item on our agenda, communications and transmittals. Jim Beneke. Start this one.
I had the pleasure of seeing the high school musical this last Saturday, Big Fish. I really enjoyed it. There's still time to catch it. They'll have another performance this Friday, November 17th, and Saturday and Sunday. I recommend it.
I was really impressed with, Scott Myers has a weekly newsletter that he sends out, and Children First Asset number 36, Peaceful Conflict Resolution. There had been some situations in a school district north of us related to racial epithets and some athletes who were suspended from state play because of their behavior that had been shared on social media. And we had a group of about 100 kids gather outside the auditorium in support of kids of color throughout the metro area. And I was very impressed with the work of Scott and Charles and Penny and the grade level coordinators working with the students to listen to their concerns, have a robust conversation, but then get kids back to class as quickly as possible. So the students were listened to in a very respectful way. And it just really impresses me that our staff works so hard to listen to the students, yet get them back focused on academics, which is what we need them to do. So thank you, everyone involved.
Bruce?
I just want to express my gratitude to Superintendent Osai. Ashton, a week ago, Friday, addressed the Student Leadership Seminar, which is part of, we had over 100 people involved in that. There were about 90 students, about 20 faculty, and a number of other people involved in this. And Superintendent Osai gave, the speech that he gave was the keynote speech. And again, we've all been part of watching him develop and become our superintendent. And I could not have been prouder in the speech that he gave. It was about values in leadership. And he brought in branding on that. And watching that expertise, watching the speech take place was really exciting. Bringing the concept of branding to leadership and values was unusual to me, but it linked it beautifully, and the students just woke up to developing their own personal brand, and it was just really beautiful to see. Two other people from St. Louis Park were involved. PSI principal Corey Meslowski was part of the presentation to the faculty, and Chris Weaver, who's in our counseling section, Chris was part of that. And one of the discussions that took place in that was about what we do with equity in St. Louis Park. And by the time that discussion was over, it just about took over the entire faculty discussion. And when it was over, several members of the faculty, and these are from 18 other schools around the metro area, they said, wow, what you're doing in St. Louis Park, we'd love to be a part of that. So it was fun to see, and again, to Ashton.
What was the group, Bruce? It was not a local high school class group?
No, it was all local high schools, but it's the Student Leadership Seminar. It's put on by the West Point Society of Minnesota, and then the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, the Reserves, and the Guard are also involved in it. And again, it doesn't push military, it pushes leadership and values, and that's what Ashton pulled together more beautifully than I've ever seen it done before. And so, again, I thank you.
Ken?
So I have a couple of things. The first one is the peaceful set-in that Karen was described. I also want to add in there that I appreciate Aston speaking there. My daughter said that you had talked to them and made some valuable points. All right. Well, Mr. Johnson did a great job, so I'll have to teach her who you are again. But anyway, the thing I wanted to talk about is the football team. They stepped up and they did a remarkable thing this year in, first of all, having a winning season, first time in 43 years. And then they went ahead and beat a team, Cooper, of which we have not beat them for seemingly ever. But they went ahead and won that game. to win the conference champions, the first time ever, and being able to go to state for the football team. So, and they had a lot of pub and a lot of things going on over the last couple of weeks. And I think the boys were very articulate on both TV and in print, and appreciated all the things that were happening for them. I feel personally, being part of those guys for so long, the seniors, I've coached them since 3rd grade, and then the sophomores, juniors, and I've coached them since they were freshmen. So I've had a great connection with them, and these guys were much different from any of the other teams that had preceded them, in that they worked as a family and they appreciate each other, and they trusted each other, and it really was a great experience to watch them work on the field. So hats off to that whole coaching organization that got them there and was able to push them through, and the athletic department for trusting in the coaches and the way that they were running this program and growing this program from where it was to where it is today. And the boys, fantastic job.
Yeah, my 2 cents on that is it was really fun, having gone to a few games during the regular season and then the section final. Just a couple notes about the players acquitting themselves so nicely with the publicity, and really, you're right. They were articulate, and you could see the joy and the happiness, and really about what it meant to them. And the students were great at the game. They were getting ready to storm the field, maybe albeit a little too early, and a administrator said, "Stop!" And they did. They listened. And we brought up, I think it was 4 buses to St. Cloud for the game, and it was one heck of a game. It was really well played, and the kids did a great job. And just during the game, you could see the sportsmanship. I mean, they were trained and coached really well, and we should be proud of them. And it's really fun about, we talk about sparks, whether it's sports or arts or whatever it is, but it does bring out a sense of community, being at the game and really pulling for your community. So that was fun to be part of. And we got really nice turnout, and it was a good time. The score didn't turn out the way we wanted, but I think looking back, I think those the boys in the community, and it all was really a wonderful experience. So it was great to be part of that. So I agree, it was great. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Ken. Seconded by Bruce. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed. That passes 7-0. We are adjourned.